Can see my screen okay. How's that? Thank you. Well, it's a real pleasure to be here today. My name's Maureen Meadows. I'm from the Centre for Business in Society in Coventry University, and we're delighted to be analysing this data set that Sandra's already referred to and drawing some insights out for you today. So just a few minutes to draw out some key trends and some industry level analysis from the data set. I think Sandra's already covered this one really. The data set is based on 13 attributes. As she mentioned, there are 9 core ones and some that have been added more recently. Most recently, the commitment to diversity and inclusion, which has just been with us for a couple of years. But yes, almost 30 years of data to give insights into these issues around reputation and performance across 26 sectors, and Sandra's already covered that. So there are 3 short sections to my presentation today. The first thing I'd like to talk about, just a couple of slides, to try and dive into issues around reputation performance and the overall performance of companies, including financial performance, and the impact that we know external events can have. The data set gives us some really rich insights there. The first thing I want to show you is trying to explore this relationship, which Sandra's referred to, the relationship between reputation as an intangible asset and market capitalisation. This chart shows market share price, so red for the UK and dark blue for Europe, the 19 countries, over a 20-year period. Again, this is one of the fascinating things about this data set, is being able to take that view of the long-term trends. The light blue dotted line that you can see on this graph is the score of reputation performance. So again, if you're participants, you'll know that you score on a scale of 0 to 10, and the average is around 6. You can see the axis to the left of the chart there. Going back over 20 years, I just want to highlight a few key time periods and spend a moment drawing out what's going on. First one, in the early 2000s, we had recession and the Iraq war. So we can see obviously a major dip in the share price at that time, and some volatility in the reputation performance, the scores in this fascinating data set as well. A second time period is, of course, the financial crash of 2008. Again, major volatility, of course, in share price, and some dip, some relationship there with some volatility in the reputation performance scores as well. A third interesting times is around about 2016, with the election of President Trump and the Brexit referendum in the UK, and so on. Again, volatility in the external environment with these major world events and UK events, and perhaps not quite so much volatility coming through in the reputation performance data there. And then the final one, bringing us right up to date, 2019, 2020, with the implementation of Brexit and obviously the global health pandemic, and we can see again some major volatility in the reputation scores. So just starting to draw some relationships here between the reputation management and the overall performance of the company. But we all know that not all sectors are affected equally by these external events. So my next slide just dives a little bit into a few of the sectors. We can't show you all the sectors at once, otherwise the slide would be impossible to read, of course. So what we've done is we've just pulled out a few key sectors on this slide, and looking at the impact in terms of those four bubbles that you saw on the previous slide as well, to draw out some perhaps obvious but important observations. Let's look at banking, which is the light blue line along the bottom there, and the major dip in 2008, of course, with the financial crash, obviously demonstrating that that sector being particularly badly hit. If we look at food, the green line, and particularly the recent years coming up to date, 2019, 2020, food sector looking pretty resilient in 2020. And if we look at transport, the light orange line, transport looking vulnerable, for example, on the extreme right of the graph, 2019. 2020. So again, just starting to draw out some of those relationships between the overall performance and the reputation performance and some of the major factors in the external environment, and how not all sectors are affected equally by that. One more slide on this theme. I know we probably like to stop talking about COVID at some point, but we can't stop talking about COVID just yet, can we? What we've done here is we've pulled out 2019 and 2020 and just a little comparison across those, just those 2 years. Obviously the blue bar for 2019 and the green bar for 2020, and looking at those reputation scores. And it's interesting to see who's up and who's down, and I think it ties in well with some of the comments Sandra's just made on her slides. So if we think about who's down a bit in 2020, we can see automotive, the sectors are alphabetical, so automotive's on the extreme left. We can see that, you know, the green bar is down a bit, 2020. Oil and gas and mining, if you go further along the chart again, are down a bit. Who's up in 2020? Beverages and drinks, health and household, some of the construction, heavy construction and home construction, we'll see a slightly better performance in 2020 than 2019. So what we want to draw out here, this little section of the presentation, is just some of those, as I say, some of those relationships between reputation performance, overall company performance, and the impact of some of these external events, which we know is not uniform across all the sectors. And this word resilience that we've been hearing about a lot over the past year, I think really comes through in that first part. What I'd like to do now is just dive down a little bit into some of the attributes. That's, again, Sandra's already brought out some of the key attributes and some of the key opportunities. Not going to go through all 13 attributes, just very quickly going to look at 5. Going to start with innovation as a critical one. Again, as Sandra's already said, what can we take from this slide? So this is a 20-year picture now. Okay, so we're going back to 2000, and again, the axis on the left is those reputation scores from 0 to 10, and the red dotted line represents the average across all sectors. So what's striking about this on innovation? Some of the weaker performance. So we've got telecoms in the dark grey. We've got banking, and what's interesting, I think, for banking, the light blue line, in the early years above average, more recently below average. And I think that's one of the important messages from these slides, is just how dynamic a picture it is. The performance of companies, the performance of sectors clearly isn't static. We do see those interesting movements over time. The flip side of the banking one would be chemicals, which is the dark brown line, typically a below average in the early years and typically above average more recently. And if we look at food, which is the green line, food quite recently a strong performance, perhaps relating to some of the current factors that we've already been talking about. So that's innovation, one key attribute. Another key attribute, again, that Sandra's already mentioned, is top talent. Can you attract, develop and retain the right people? So again, it's just some similar trends for 5 of the key sectors here. When we get this really interesting 20-year snapshot, we can see that banking has once again typically gone from being above average to being rather below average, actually. Chemicals, again, having moved the dark brown line, moved from typically being below average to a rather stronger performance. And we can see some improvement in food, again, the green line, some improvement in the food sector over time. Moving swiftly on, if I can talk about finance for a moment, financial soundness being another key attribute that Sandra's just mentioned. Again, what comes out of this analysis of the 20-year picture, a low performance for telecoms. Banking, I'm afraid the story is one of going from perhaps above average to below average with the light blue line there. And the property developer sector is interesting in this one, tending more to above average, so the light brown line towards the right of the graph. Just a couple more of the key attributes to draw your attention to. So this one is the community and environmental responsibility. That's engaging with key stakeholders in that space. Again, a low performance from telecoms. Retail is on this graph, so the dark blue line, quite a low performance from retail, and the strong performer on this one is food. So if you look at the green line, a strong performance over time from the food producers and providers sector. And finally, quality of products and services. If I can show you this as another key attribute, one that, again, Sandra mentioned as absolutely table stakes, if you like. We can see a number of low performers again here. So telecoms and banking, the dark grey and the light blue, weaker performers here. Transport, also in this case, the yellow line, perhaps best described, quite a low performance there. So who are the good performers in this area? The oil, gas and mining, the purple line, and also the dark brown, the business support services. So for me, I think an important takeaway from some of this is that that variation across sectors and the variation across time. It's not a static picture. We see some across the sectors, seeing that variation, varying impact across industries of some of the external factors, such as the global health pandemic. We've seen the variations over time in the performance of a particular industry on the key attributes. It's not a static picture. And the last few slides, which I've just skipped, we're just looking at, for a particular sector, the range of performance across the attributes there, showing that no one has got all the answers, if you like, that there are strong spots and weak spots for all the sectors, suggesting scope for development and performance improvements there. So I'll stop there. Thank you, Sandra.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Maureen.